Hello, I'm Eduardo Jimenez, and today I'd like to talk about the social validity crisis of ABA and why ABA is better when it works like a sailboat instead of a train. So today we'll talk about social validity, how ABA can be like a train, the social validity crisis, how ABA can be like a sailboat, and how we can build it. So let's start with some context. Social validity is a concept that helps behavior analysts align their interventions with the resources, values, and context of their individual families. The BACB Code of Ethics supports social validity. The first element of social validity is relevant goals. All goals should be relevant and meaningful to the families that we work with and should be shaped from beginning to end with their involvement. Treatments should be acceptable to the families based on their cultural values, their personal values, and again, help with them included in the process of developing the techniques all along the way. And treatment effect should be significant. All clients should benefit from the ABA treatment in ways that are important in their lives. So without social validity, ABA could be like a train. Like a train with predetermined destinations, a behavior analyst could select goals based on their preferences or assumptions rather than being shaped with the input of the family. Trains have fixed routes, just like a behavior analyst could select techniques that are their preference rather than ones that are shaped by the preferences of their clients and stakeholders, their values, context, and available resources. Trains are driven by a single person, just like a BA who might, run the whole session, the intervention without appropriate input from their stakeholders and their client. And trains are unresponsive, just like a behavior analyst who isn't monitoring their client's assent, their their stakeholder satisfaction, or changes in the context of the environment, such as changes in the family. So we'll talk about the social validity crisis of ABA. In 2023, Huntington and colleagues performed a meta-analysis of nearly 3,000 published ABA peer-reviewed journal articles and identified 899 that included interventions conducted with participants. So they reviewed those and they found that only 425 of them reported any measure of social validity. They found that 47% of journal articles included measures of social validity, but that the methods and the definitions were inconsistent. There was and is no specific methodology for testing for social validity. And people were calling different things social validity. Um, what I found was that it's unknown how many of the articles that claim to measure social validity are actually effectively measuring it. Um, I recently read an article by Grossberg and Charlup from 2017 where they reported that they had measured social validity. But when I read the article, their measure of social validity included showing videotapes of the participants engaging in social behaviors after having received intervention to a group of 20 mothers. The problem was that the mothers were not related to the children, so nor were they shown baseline video of the baseline behaviors, social behaviors of those participants. So in essence, they were unable to identify if the goals were significant, if the treatments were acceptable, and if the effects were significant post-treatment. In addition, the American Medical Association recently removed specific references to ABA from its handbook following some push from autism advocates, and they cited serious concerns regarding social validity. One of their main concerns was that ABA doesn't require receiving input or assent from the children that they work with. Um, the client assent is a term that means that the clients are willingly participating in treatment without coercion. And it's been found by Fabrizio that Clients who assent to treatment are more enthusiastic, engaged, and happy when having treatment, which likely leads to better outcomes and would be a good uh, barrier to any abuses happening. They also cited unacceptable techniques, both current and historical. So those would include electric shocks, denying basic rights such as access to communication devices, food, access to the toilet, and also corporal punishment and public humiliation. Um, they also identified socially insignificant goals related to to normalization, and I'll also say something about sexual conversion therapy. So the AMA was concerned about the principle of normalization in ABA because it has sometimes guided behavior analysts to target behaviors like self-stimulatory behaviors and eye contact. And autism activists, they say that self-stimulatory behaviors help people with autism to modulate their level of anxiety and their emotions. And they also state that forcing somebody to um, make eye contact with others can be very aversive. Another word on that last point is that many autism activists say that it's society that should conform more to neurodivergent people than forcing neurodivergent people to wear a mask and pretend not to have these behaviors. The AMA also cited some surveys that reported increased rates of post traumatic stress disorder in people who had received ABA therapy. While those surveys had flawed methodologies, the idea that people are coming forward to talk about how they had been traumatized because of applied behavior analysis is very troubling and deserves our attention. There's also been some report of increased rates of suicide among people who had received ABA. Now, there needs to be additional research done on the rates of suicide, but I found one historical example from 1974 in a Records and Lovas study where um, they had guided a father to use corporal punishment on their 4-year-old child whenever he engaged in what they saw as feminine behavior. In their article, they reported that at least once the child had been severely beaten. And years later, when that child grew up, he committed suicide at the age of 32. So let's talk about what happens when social validity guides ABA therapy. And I like the analogy of a sailboat. So in this analogy, um, there are endless destinations and routes. So in therapy guided by social validity, families would help to shape interventions based on their unique context, values, cultural contexts. So they would literally have an infinite number of possible goals, you know, ultimate outcomes that they would like to reach. And the interventions themselves would be shaped by family or stakeholder and client preferences. So the ways to get to those goals would also be endless. We can think of the boat as the physical and social context that the client is sort of enveloped in and shapes therapy, the design of therapy. We can think of the captain as the client and stakeholders who are involved from beginning to end with designing interventions and goals, and also ultimately have the final say. And the navigator would be the behavior analyst who selects the most effective goals and effective treatments based on the feedback and guidance of the captain and the shape of the boat. The wind would be positive reinforcement pushing the sailboat towards its goal. And the sails represent client assent, which catches the wind, but only if it's open. We know that learners who are nonverbal can give assent through their body language, and that learners who assent to treatment are more enthusiastic and happy. So we know that social validity is important to effective therapy, and we know that There's a dearth of reporting on it in the literature. So how do we build it? Well, we know that as an evidence-based practice, all changes must flow from the literature. So we will start there, but it's important to say that we might also need some updates to the BACB Code of Ethics. So first, we need to research effective methods of social validity and develop formal standards. We have to make effective measures of social validity and make effective measures of social validity a requirement for all journal articles that include intervention with human participants. We also have to increase research on how behavior analysts implement social validity in the field. It's no good if we know how things are going in the literature, but not in the actual practicing world. And then we have to improve requirements at universities. So as the next generation of behavior analysts are trained, that they are aware of how important social validity is to effective and ethical treatment, and include it in their research. And lastly, we need to research the long-term positive and negative effects of ABA therapy. So now that we've reached this point, I'd like to know what are your thoughts and what questions you have.